Hi Sumit, in this tutorial I'll be learning how to make this beautiful free crop top and this jumbo pant. So I made this with a Kampala fabric, an Adire fabric, yes, and of course it has pockets. This is actually not for me, it's actually for my friend, so, and she's a size 10, so imagine how this would look on her. So if you like to see how I make this beautiful two-piece, then you need to see this tutorial to the very end. My name is Veronica Adams Easy. Welcome to Vera Adams YouTube channel. Without wasting time, let's get started. As we know, this Kampala set is made of 5 years. Actually, it's not up to 5 years, like 4 and about 30 inches thereabout. Anyways, I am going ahead to fold it so that I can cut out the trouser first. We'll be cutting out the trouser first here. I've gone ahead to mark the starting line, and on that starting line I placed my tape on 1 inch. Actually, I eventually increased the band. That was supposed to represent the band. So I came down by 9.5 inches, which indicates the hip line. And I'm coming down by 13 inches for the crotch area. Actually, the crotch area is 12 inches. But because this is a free pant, I actually increased it by 1 inch. And from there, I'm going to go ahead to mark the length of the trouser, which is 39 inches. I went ahead to add the hem allowance. I'm going to have to cut that out so it will be easy for us to work on this piece. So because I don't just I want to add a bit of fitting, I came in by 1.5 inches from the waistline and I'm connecting it right into the hip line, then downwards as you're seeing me doing here. This is actually not important, it is optional, it depends on what you want. So on the crotch line, I'm going to measure the crotch measurements I'm working with is 24 inches. 24 inches divided by 2 is 12 inches. And because we want this to be free, I'm going to have to add 4 inches. You can do 3 or you can do more than that depending on what you want. So all we have here is 16 inches. That's 12 inches plus 4 inches will give 16 inches. From this crotch area, I'm going to move up to the waist. And on the waist, the first measurement that I took for that's 12 inches. I'm going to go ahead to mark it on the waistline. So on the waistline I have 12 inches. I'll connect it to the 12 inches that I initially marked on the crotch line, and I'll connect it together also. I'll come down by 1 inch. Actually, I came down by half of an inch here, but I corrected this later. So I'll connect this to the side waist, just as you see me doing. So right here, the next thing to do is to get our curve for the crotch, and I'm going to be using free hand to get this. So once this is done, I'm going to move to the hem of this trouser, and I'm going to go ahead to mark the same 16 inches that we have right here. I'll go ahead to mark it at the hem of this trouser. You can go ahead to do more depending on what you want, or you can do less, but I want it as exactly 16 inches. At this point, I'm going to go ahead to start cutting, and this means that we're done with the cutting of the front piece of this trouser. Remember that I said I corrected this slope, so this was where I made the correction. So I've extended by half of an inch more, and I'm connecting. And because we're cutting directly on the fabric, I'm going ahead to add half of an inch that will serve as the joining allowance to our band here. Now that we're done with this, we're going to go ahead to bring the remnant of the fabric and also fold it into 2 as you are seeing me doing here, and we'll bring in the front piece so that we can use it to cut out the back piece as well. So I've gone ahead to place the front piece on the remnant of the fabric, and I'll go ahead to extend. Note that the back piece is actually wider than the front, so I'm going ahead to extend it by 3 inches, just as you're seeing me doing here. I'm actually marked 2.5 inches, but at the crotch area I did 3 inches. So for every other part, I'm marking 2.5 inches. And once I'm done marking, I'm going to go ahead to connect these points together, so we'll have exactly the same shape as we have for that of the front. Now that we have the exact length that we want, I'll go ahead to cut the remaining out, and then go ahead to start cutting right from the bottom, just as you're seeing me doing. The major difference between the front and the back piece of a trouser is usually that the back piece is bigger, that's wider, and that on the back or at the back region there's an extension just so as to cover the butt properly. So right here at this point, I'm going to go up by 1.5 inches from the front piece. What we have on the front piece, I'm going to come up by 1.5 inches and connect right to the side. So the side is going to be the same, but at the center back you are going to have an extension, and this is to ensure that the butt is properly covered. Whatever you use as the extension depends on the size of your client, how big they are, how big the butt is. Right at this point, we're done with the cutting of both the front pieces and the back pieces of this trouser, and this is what it looks like. This jumbo pant will be having pockets, so I'm going to go ahead to make notches for the pocket space. So I'll come down by 1.5 inch from the waistline. I'll make a notch right there, and from that point I'm going to come down by 7 inches, which would represent the pocket space. I'm going to create a notch at 7 inches. Now that we're done with the cutting of the trouser, we can move ahead to cut out the top. This fabric right here is already on fold, so the first thing to do is to determine the length, and the length of this crop top is 17 inches. I went ahead to add 1 inch for allowance, for the hemming allowance. From the center of this folded fabric, I'm going to go ahead to mark half of the shoulder measurement, which is 7.5 inches. I'll go down and mark the bust line, which is 10 inches. I'll come up rather from the bust line by 2 inches, and that will be the chest line. That means the chest line I'm working with here is 8 inches. So on that chest line, I'm going to mark the same 7.5 inches, which is the half of the shoulder measurement. I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and the neckline width I'm using right here is 3.5 inches. So from the neckline width, I'm going to connect right into the shoulder slope. I'll go ahead and divide what I have left on this armhole line into 2, and I'll make a mark right there and come in by 1/2 inch from that point. So once this is done, I'm going to go ahead to mark a quarter of the bust measurement, which is 9 inches. The bust measurement is 36 inches. I've gone ahead to mark 3 inches extra to the bust measurement, and I'll be using 1 inch to sew on the side. Then the 2 extra inches will be for ease, since this top does not have a zipper. But if you like to add a zipper to yours, there's no need for you to add extra allowances. I hope you understand this. So the same thing that I measured on the bust line, I went ahead to measure it on the waistline. So what I'm doing right here is adding 1/2 inch around the shoulder area. That is what you use to join together, since we're cutting directly on the fabric. So I'm going ahead to cut this all out. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to use this to cut out the second piece. So there's no difference between the front and the back, since we're not adding zipper allowance. So I'll go ahead to use this to cut out the back piece. Once I'm done cutting this out, I can now go ahead to work on the neckline. So I'll be coming down from here by 6 inches. I'll go ahead and connect it right into the neck width, just as you're seeing. This will represent the front piece. So I'll bring in the back piece and also work on the neckline for the back piece. So for the back piece, we're going to make it higher. That is, I'm going to only come down by 1 inch from the shoulder slope. So I'll mark 1 inch from the shoulder slope and connect it right into the neck width. So that's all we're going to be doing for the back piece. So right here we have both the front and the back piece. So I'm trying to use this to determine or to cut out the sleeve. So I'm going to be using 23.5 inches plus allowance for the sleeve length, and for the width I'm using 11 inches that I just measured around the armhole area of the body, or the bodies rather. So right here I've already gone ahead to mark out the curve for the sleeve, and I'm trying to measure back if I have exactly what I need. I'll just go ahead to give this the shape that I want. So I want it exactly the the shape that I'm sketching right here. So I'll go ahead and cut it out. You can do whatever you want depending on your preference and the amount of fabric that you have available. So I'm done cutting the two sleeves, and I'll go ahead to start coupling the trouser pieces. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead to cut out facing. Since we're not going to be using lining for this, I'm going to cut out facing for the front and the back of the crop top. So right here, I've gone ahead to cut out facing for the front and also facing for the back. Now we can start with the joining of the trouser pieces. So next thing to do is to start joining the trouser pieces together. So the first thing first, we're going to bring in pockets, and I'm going to place the pockets like about 1 inch below the waistline. That's the waist of the trouser. So following the notch that we did earlier, remember that we came down by 1.5 inches away from the waistline. I'll go ahead and follow that same notch and create that same notch on the pocket. I also come down that 7 inches that we marked. I also go ahead and mark it on the trouser, on the pockets rather. So I'm go ahead and pin it down and sew from one point to another. That's from the first notch to the second notch that we created on the pocket area. I hope you understand this, with 1/2 inch. Once we're done with this, we're going to go ahead to run a top stitch right on the pocket. Note that it is on the pocket piece that you run a top stitch, so this will make the pocket naturally slid backwards. So at this point, you can go ahead and create just a stitch, one stitch to just hold those two places down. Then we can cover up like you're seeing me doing here. So right here, you can pull the trouser piece up, then create a notch about 1/2 inch away from that point, just as you're seeing me doing here. But you turn the pocket inside out. That means you first sew on this right side. Make sure that you're sewing on the right side first. So from that area that we notched down to the center of the pocket, go ahead and sew. After sewing, I went ahead to trim out the excesses. So once you're done with this, you can now turn the pocket inside out. Now you are going to run a stitch on the wrong side of the pocket. So once you run a stitch on the wrong side of the pocket, that will hold it down, and this is what it would look like on the right side. So you can now go ahead and maybe just pin down that edge down, just as I did. In case you don't really understand, I'm still going to repeat the same process on the other piece. That's the second front piece. So right here, I'm also going to go ahead to do the same thing on this piece. I'm coming up by like 1 inch away from the initial notch that we created on the front piece. So I'm going to go ahead and follow that same notch and make that notch on the pocket piece. And for the second notch as well, I'm going to repeat the second notch right there on the pocket piece. So after this is done, I can go ahead to sew it down from one notch area to the other. So from this first notch, I'm going to run 1/2 inch stitch till I get to the second notch. Once this stitch has been made, can go ahead to create a top stitch right on the pocket piece. Then this would automatically let the pocket to slide over to the back. Then you can cover it up like this and then just stitch down. When you flip it over, you can go ahead to create a notch about 1/2 inch below the original notch that was made earlier. Then you go ahead to sew the pocket on the right side. Once you're done with that, you turn it inside out, then sew on the wrong side. So right side first, then wrong side. So now at the end, you have something looking like this. So this is what the pocket space is looking like for both pieces, then the left side and the right side. So this is what it is looking like. So once this has been achieved, so look at how it is looking on the wrong side. So once you're done with this, you can go ahead to join these front pieces still at around the crotch area, starting from the waistline. So I'll go ahead and use pins to hold this down. Take it to the sewing machine to sew with 1/2 inch right from the waistline into the crotch. Once this is done, I'll bring in the back pieces, and here is the back pieces. I'll also go ahead and join just as we did for the front piece. I'll start from the waist area right into the crotch with 1/2 inch as well. So here's what the front piece looks like after I was done stitching. I'll go ahead and bring in the back piece as well. So here's the back piece. Next thing is to try to hold the two together around the side. So I'm going to go ahead to stitch right from the side waist till we get to the hem of this trouser. I'll use half of an inch to sew this down. Once I'm done with this side, I'm also going to go over to the other side, align the back and the front piece together, go ahead and stitch down with half of an inch. So here is what I have after I went ahead to stitch down, as you can see right here, for both sides. So the next thing to do is try to align these two pieces around the crotch. So I'm going to go ahead to pin it down because I want the crotch to be aligned, or to align properly. So then I can move to the hem depending on what you want to take. I'll go ahead and use like about 1 inch to stitch down right from the hem of one leg right into the crotch. Continue to stitch down till I get to the hem of the other leg as well. So at this point I'm gonna have to stitch down, and this is what everything looks like. You can see right here that this crotch area aligns well. That's what I want. So the next thing to do is to try to fix the band. So I've gone ahead to cut out this piece to use to make the band. So I think I have about 2.5 inches on a fold. I have a long piece actually. I made sure that this piece equals the entire waist measurement that we have on the trouser. For the elastic, the length is a bit over 1.5 inches, while the weight is about 27 inches. I went ahead to stitch it down, as you can see here. Right here, I'm ensuring that the measurement on this fabric for the band equals what I have, exactly what I have, with about 1 inch for stitching. So I can now go ahead to stitch this down, right side facing right side. As you can see, I went ahead to iron this down. So this is it after I was done joining it, so that I have it closed. I can now bring in the elastic piece and insert it. Look at how I'm inserting it. So both pieces are closed. There's no open end for the fabric, there's no open end for the elastic. So I'm going to go ahead and start stretching the elastic till it fits in completely. So I'm pinning it down right here. I'll take it to the sewing machine. I'm showing you how I'm going to go ahead to be pulling it inside so that I can run a stitch to close this up. So now I can go ahead and take it to the sewing machine, and this is what we have after I went ahead to stitch it down. See how it's looking. So now we can bring in the trouser. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead to create a notch for the center of this band. So I'll mark the center, then I'll fold this as so, and then mark the other center as well. So I have 2 points. So I'll go ahead and still fold it, and then go ahead and create 2 more notches. This would give me 4 notches at the end. Remember that the sides of a trouser, we have 4: the center front, the center back, and the 2 sides. So I'll go ahead and align these 4 notches to the 4 points or 4 edges of this trouser. So right here I'm starting with the center front, then I'll align the second notch to the side, one of the side, then the third one to the other side, then the fourth one to the center back. I hope you understand this. So once I do this, I'll take this to the sewing machine and sew it. Because of the elastic, this will actually go around despite the way it's looking right here. So once I'm done with that, I'll bring it here to show us what it looks like. So at this point I was done sewing, and this is what it looks like. Once you're done with this part, you notice that you have rough ends, so you can actually use a serger to knit up this part. I will then go ahead to sew directly on the elastic. So I'll come down by half of an inch from the top, and then also half of an inch from the bottom of the band, and run a stitch just as you're seeing right here. This is actually optional, you don't have to do this, but I just want to do this. So after I was done, this is what it is looking like. So you have a space of about 1 inch between those lines. I'm going to go ahead and mark 1 inch away from the center. I'm going to use that to create hole that's channels where our ropes are going to pass. So I'll go ahead and make small, just make it small. I realized that this was not enough, so I went ahead to just cut it the more, but you need to be very careful depending on the ropes that you have made already. That's the kind of holes that you'll be doing. So I went ahead to create the second hole, also coming away from the center front by 1 inch. So that means on both sides of the center front we have a rope channel. So right here I actually used broom to pass this rope inside this because I couldn't find my safety pin. So I'm passing this from one end. The rope is actually a very long one, so make sure that you make a very long rope. So once I'm done passing it, and this is what I have. So the rope can be used to adjust the fitting of this trouser. So when this trouser is worn and is not so fitted, the rope can help to adjust to the right fitting. Now finally I can go ahead and hem the bottom of this trouser, so we can move directly into the top part. So we're going to be very fast with this. I'll go ahead and join the facing of the back to the back piece, right side facing right side. Go ahead and run a stitch of 1/2 inch. Once we're done stitching this down, I'll also go ahead and run a top stitch on the facing. Please take note on the facing, so that this facing will directly slide to the back. That's to the wrong side. So I'll also bring in the front piece. I'll have placed the facing on it. I'll also go ahead and run a stitch to follow the V-shaped. Once that is done, I'll also go ahead and run a top stitch on the facing. Make sure to also hem the edges of the facing as well for both the front and the back. So this is what the back is looking like after I was done. You can see that the hem of the facing has been hemmed here. That's the bottom of the facing has been hemmed. You can see what it's looking like on the front piece as well. Once this is done, next thing is to align both the front and the back on the shoulder so that we can join together. So I'll align the facing for one part of the back with the facing with one part of the front, and also go ahead and pin it down, making sure that they both align. And then I'll take this to the sewing machine and run a stitch of 1/2 inch. I'll go ahead and repeat this same thing on the other side as well. Once this is done, next thing is to bring in the sleeve, making sure that you've already notched the center of the sleeve. Then align the center of the sleeve to the area where you joined the point where you joined the back and the front together. So then start coupling it together just as you're seeing me doing. You can use pins to hold this down, then take it to the sewing machine to stitch it down. So this is it after I went ahead to stitch down both sleeves together. So now next thing to do is to try and fold in the sleeves just as you're seeing me doing here, making sure that they align around the armhole area, then pin down at the armhole point. Then once you're done with this, you can also go ahead and pin it down at the hem of the sleeve. Then you can also go to the hem of the top and pin it down. Now you can go ahead and use 1 inch to stitch down on that side. You can also repeat the same process for this other side. Once you're done stitching down, you can also go ahead and hem the sleeves, both sleeves. Also make sure to hem the bottom of this top. Now that all that is done, just ensure to use an hemming comb to attach this, that's the facing, directly to the fabric. And now we've come to the end of this tutorial. This is the result that we have. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new here, do well to subscribe. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.